On July 3rd, the U.S. House of Representatives narrowly passed President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill with a 218 to 214 vote, and the bill was signed on July 4th, America Day.
That's right.
I believe there were B-2 bombers, the ones that busted up some bunker somewhere, flew over the White House during the signing.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
True American style. Incredible stuff. All right, so some key points of the bill. I guess there's two main parts to it. First of all, there's tax cuts. So the bill made permanent the 2017 tax cuts, and then it introduced new tax cuts in the form of deductions on tips, overtime pay, and auto loan interest. It also raised the child tax credit, and it raised the state and local tax deduction cap from $10K to $40K. Now, on top of the tax cuts, I would say that part of this is, some people, I don't know, I would call it direct stimulus. So you've got an additional $150 billion in new defense spending earmarked in the bill, and another $150 billion for border enforcement and deportations. That in that latter, you've got $46.5 billion for the U.S.-Mexico border wall. So $300 billion in additional, call it defense spending, defense and border enforcement spending. Now, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that the bill will add approximately $2.8 trillion to the national debt over the next decade, and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has a similar assessment, saying that the bill will, quote, likely massively increase the U.S. national debt. And the CRFB estimates the bill would add $5.5 trillion to the debt. This will effectively see the national debt rising from the current 100% of GDP to 127% of GDP by 2034.
It should be noted that some of these numbers are contested, especially on the right, with other parts of the Republican Party and Trump in particular, their agenda that has ways of adding revenue or cutting costs, but we don't have to get into all that kind of stuff. It kind of gets difficult to track who is saying what and their motivations, but more on that later. So Ray Dalio, the billionaire investor who has long been warning that the U.S. is approaching a dangerous tipping point because of the debt, he came to a similar conclusion about the numbers from the CRFB. He said, quote, the bill is expected to lead to spending of about $7 trillion a year with inflows of about $5 trillion a year. So the debt, which is now about 6 times the money taken in, 100% of GDP, and about $230,000 per American family, will rise over 10 years to about 7.5x the money taken in, 130% of GDP, and $425,000 per family. That will increase the interest and principal payments on the debt from about $10 trillion, $1 trillion in interest, $9 trillion in principal, to about $18 trillion, of which $2 trillion is interest payments, which will lead to either a big squeezing out of spending and or unimaginable tax increases, or a lot of printing and devaluing of money and pushing interest rates to unattractively low levels.
I've got my money on the latter. Go on,
yeah,
David.
I think they've kind of almost, I don't know if it's been explicit, but they've talked about basically like inflating away the debt. I mean, it's kind of an open secret, I think. And so this is bad for bonds and U.S. credit markets. It's bad for everybody in the U.S. Treasury market and the backbone of the capital markets. It's bad for savers. And so unless this path is soon rectified to bring the budget deficit from roughly 7% of GDP to about 3%, painful disruptions will likely occur.
Okay, so that's Ray Dalio's take.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of people have pinned their hopes that the Big Beautiful Bill enables higher GDP growth, enables the economy to grow faster, and that is what's going to make everything balance out in the end. That's how the U.S. they're going to grow their way out of the mess. So I found this interesting take here from this guy, Farziness. So he says, the U.S. will need to grow GDP by an average of 4 to 7% per year for the next 10 years in order to offset the spending in the Big Beautiful Bill. Of course, the last time the U.S. had GDP growth anywhere near that was the year 2000, when GDP grew by 4%. Now, it was also pointed out, I think, by Eric Voorhees, who is commenting on that last post I just shared. That projection actually also assumes that the actual spending 5 to 10 years from now will only be what was projected today, which is never really the case. So it seems unlikely the U.S. is going to be able to grow its way out of the debt situation by the changes made with the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah. I mean, but again, there are other factors at play here. So, for example, I don't want to get too political and stuff, but like just the border enforcement and deportations, that can have a positive effect on the economy because, like, for example, the non-farm payroll of last week, it was a big surprise to the upside, positive. And the likely reason is because people are being deported and it shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be in America. So you get savings that way, as in like through healthcare and other like quasi entitlements that perhaps the illegal aliens are taking up. And then the tariffs apparently are bringing in a decent amount of revenue, and this kind of stuff is supposed to, I think, offset some of the spending. But yeah, I mean, pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty hard to argue that this bill does not introduce just like new spending and sort of as they've done for the past 20 years, just kick the can down the road and basically effectively end up to having to print more money to paper things over, which, as we know, leads to price appreciation in scarce assets, of which Bitcoin and crypto are our preferred ones.
That's right. So, I mean, yeah, this news is definitely good for Bitcoin and crypto at large, but especially Bitcoin. And you're going to see money printing, and you're probably going to see money printing in other countries, like we've talked about on this show and Token Narrative. So probably, at least the talk this morning on crypto Twitter has been incredibly positive. Pump incoming, imminent.
Yeah, and we should note that the price of Bitcoin at the time of recording has been positive in the last, call it last 12 hours. We're up around $109,000. So again, pushing the top of that range that we've been in for the last several months. Will Bitcoin see a breakout? Maybe the Big Beautiful Bill is the thing that finally makes it happen.
Yeah. Big Beautiful Bill, you have the Middle East kind of calming down, so you're not going to have like these kind of exogenous events that would cause attention to focus there and maybe get some risk mitigation. So yeah,